You will never be able to juggle. That sounds harsh, but all you need to do is to pick the balls up every time you drop them. Your hands learn how to juggle. It's muscle memory. Eventually you can juggle without even thinking about it. Thanks, hands. Juggling is a single throw. The throw looks like this, and the other way it looks like that. Do it fast enough with 3 balls and it... Oh look, juggling. When you start, you will drop. No one knows how to juggle when they start. Everybody drops hundreds and hundreds of times before they reach success. All you need to do is to keep picking it up every time. Don't get bored, don't give up, don't go, oh, I want to do something else. Keep picking up those balls until you know how to juggle. Within an hour of practicing this, even if you don't know what you're doing, you'll probably manage 20 catches. Within 2 hours, you might reach 50. Within 3, you'll probably reach over 100. You'll be ready to do some tricks. Yeah. It's cool. The first trick that most people attempt is 2 in 1 hand, which is about the same difficulty as 3 balls in 2 hands. At the start, you'll probably find it a little bit easier. Even people who can't juggle can manage 3 or 4 catches with that, and they're all like, hey, look at me, I know how to juggle. But it takes longer to master. It is, after all, how you do 4-ball juggling. That is just 2 in each hand, like that. So rather than starting with 4-ball juggling, which is about 10 times harder to learn, it takes 10 times longer to master than 3-ball juggling, you should start with some 3-ball juggling tricks. The easiest one is 1 over the top, like this. Oh look, and then do it back the other way. Learn it both ways. Then you can start batting it back and forth. That's the staple of early juggling montages, that is. And then once you get good enough, you can do it over and over again. Look at that. That's called the half shower. And if you do it with both hands at the same time, that's the inverse cascade, which I still find a lot more difficult than the normal juggling cascade like this. But some people learn that way. Don't do it, it's ugly. What other juggling tricks are there? Of course, the Mills mess. This is one that took me months to get down. It's probably the most beautiful 3-ball pattern. I've said this already, but it is definitely the best 3-ball pattern that you can do. When you start off, the problem is you don't curve it in the air. You juggle more like that, and it looks kind of awkward. But once you get the curves down, this will become a staple of your early juggling montage videos. It's such a beautiful pattern. Another one you can do is the shower. So you know how people do fake juggling like that with 2 balls. Just throw another ball into the pattern, and that's a pretty decent juggling move, that is. I can't even do that the other way that well. Look how rubbish I am. It's because I wasn't that interested in 3-ball juggling. I always liked numbers. I liked going up to 4, and then 5, and 6, 7. I can even flash 9. I'm not going to try it now because I haven't done it in years, but 5-ball juggling, if that looks similar to 3-ball, that's because it's the same thing. It's the same throw, just higher and faster and more accurate. But don't let that deceive you. That's 100 times harder to learn. I think my record with this is about 4 minutes, because it is actually quite tiring. Do that every day and you'll get some pretty good muscles on you. The sky's the limit, really. Find someone with a nice high ceiling. You don't really want to do it outside because then you're weather dependent. Don't sit down either, because sitting down is much more difficult. Yeah, just enjoy it. Juggling is probably one of the most rewarding hobbies I've ever done. Per hour, I think it's given me more fun than Counter-Strike. I haven't done it for as many hours as I've played Counter-Strike, but I think it's a lot more impressive. No one's impressed with your Counter-Strike ability. Even if you're really good, you just end up... people hate you. Right, so you've decided that you want to learn to juggle. But what do you juggle with? The best option are beanbags, ball sacks, whatever you want to call them. And they're the best because they're not fully filled, which means that when they land and they don't bounce out of your hand. There's nothing worse than failing at a juggling move because the ball has bounced out of your hand. You feel cheated. So don't use juggling balls. Use juggling beanbags. But say you're locked down and can't get out of your house. Don't worry. All you need are 3 pairs of socks. They don't even need to be clean. Here's one I made earlier. This is quite complicated, so you're going to have to pay attention here. To make a ball out of a pair of socks, get 1 ball and shove it down into the other one. Once you've done this, you then tuck the ball into itself again. Ballception. And you repeat this over and over again and make it as tight as you can, because otherwise it's just going to unravel when you use it, and that sucks. And there you have it, a ball sock. It's not quite as good as a proper beanbag, but it'll do the job until you get one. Make 3 of these now. You didn't see that.
After 3 months of practicing maybe an hour or so a day, I could manage several catches of 3 in one hand and a fairly lengthy 3-ball routine. You can see I still hadn't sussed the Mills mess, which looks quite wooden in this sequence. But one day soon after this, it just happened. Even now I don't understand how that move works. Oh, and I can manage a few 2 in one hand patterns at this time as well. This next bit's going to sound really petty, but if you make progress videos, try to mix up where you record them, because having 30 or so set in the same room but with different clutter patterns is really boring to look at. I know this shouldn't matter at all, but as someone who's done it, it does. And that's why I value this footage, filmed in Sri Lanka, so highly, even if I don't manage anything too impressive in it. You'll always manage your best juggling runs in the most boring looking places, usually staring straight at a light coloured wall for visibility, and always when the camera isn't recording. Also, since all this stuff was recorded about 10 years ago, I gave them all embarrassing music tracks that YouTube later identified and then blocked. So consider recording yours without music, just in case you change your music taste later. But keep a folder of the music you juggle to somewhere, just for the memories. Listening to Britney Spears still transports me back to good times. Petty rant over. Back to the juggling. After 6 months, I was getting around 22 catches with 5 balls. I could get 32 catches with 4 balls. I perhaps should have been better than that if I was managing 5 balls, but honestly I spent far more time on 5 because I like the pattern a lot more. After just 1 more month of practice, I was managing over 100 catches with 5 balls, though you can see I'm not fully stable with it and ended up turning around in circles slowly. Another problem you can develop from bad juggling posture is Dietz syndrome, which I thought was some horrible juggling disease, but it's actually just named after a really good juggler called Thomas Dietz, who juggles lopsided, with one shoulder raised higher than the other. It's done to compensate for an unbalanced juggling style.
118.
9 months after starting juggling, I was getting about 40 catches with 6-ball juggling, kneeling down. That's 3 in each hand. I hate 6-ball juggling, probably because my left hand always lets me down, because I always practice stuff in my right hand a lot more. Funnily enough, I was always better at juggling 3 in my left hand if I was also juggling 3 in my right at the same time. At this point I'm also beginning to get the 4-ball Mills mess down, and my 7-ball juggling's coming along nicely as well. If it helps, think of it as 3-ball juggling, but with 4 extra balls. And 10,000 times harder. I could manage a short 5-ball routine with half showers and multiplexes, which are rubbish moves where you throw 2 balls at the same time. After a year of juggling, I finally had access to a high ceiling, which may or may not have been a factor when considering which university hall I stayed in. There were some accidents. After a year and 3 quarters, I could manage a decent run of 7 balls which would eventually get too big and fail, a bit like juggling in VR does. I managed a 7-ball 6-up 360, which actually I've never done better than I have here. I also managed a qualify of 8 balls, which is when you catch the number of balls you're juggling times 2. And I almost managed 12 catches with 9 balls. Damn, I was good. And lastly, after 2.5 years of juggling, this remains my best video. It was after a week of pretty intensive training every day, and on the final one I broke almost every one of my juggling records. Then never really returned to juggling apart from on a holiday a few years later, and that was just to get some nice mountain footage. If you're learning to juggle, my advice to you is to learn to count your catches. It makes monitoring your progress easier and more noticeable. There used to be a website called Juggling DB, which was awesome because you could input all your records and watch how they had improved over time. There were always a few people who abused it by claiming they had juggled 7 balls for 10 hours solid, but most were good about it, and I enjoyed the rivalries I had with other jugglers of similar ability. Shame the site doesn't exist anymore. It's tempting to count your throws since you make more of them, but you have to count your catches and must stop counting immediately after dropping one, which I might not always have done. Naughty me. I count every catch in my right hand and go up in 2s, because once you reach 5 or more balls you have to start counting pretty quickly otherwise. I remember finding it hard to remember how many catches I had made when I first started out, but you end up instinctively counting without thinking about it. My records with juggling were 13 catches with 9 balls, 24 with 8, 150 with 7, 180 with 6, several minutes with 5, and too long with 3 or 4. Juggling was never a chore, it was something I loved doing. The people who never understood why I wanted to juggle in the first place ended up being the ones who asked why I had stopped. And I guess it's because I had achieved everything I wanted with it. I was always a big fan of big numbers juggling. Check out Anthony Gatto, because he's among the best for stuff like 7 or 8 balls. What makes juggling more appealing than other hobbies to me was how consistent the progress was. You don't have to rely on other people, or monitoring your progress over a matter of months like other hobbies often require. If you juggle daily, then you beat at least one of your records every day. But when you get to 7 or more balls, it gets so tiring and takes so long to prepare between each throw that progress slows down immensely, and I think that ultimately made me stop. I like the idea of trying to break my records again someday. I reckon I could do it with a week of practice. It would only take a few hours to regain most of my old skills. It's progressing further than that which would take the most time. But until then, that's my juggling story. Good luck with yours.